What's your best, well, that escalated quickly, story? Story 1. I used to work really early in the morning at UPS and was giving a coworker a ride to work every day. I would leave my house at around 3:30 a.m. or so and pick him up from the next town over. He would wait for me in the middle of a deserted main street. So one morning, I'm going through my normal routine. I get to the street and don't see him. I pull over at where I usually pick him up from and wait. At this point, I'm just looking around because I didn't actually know which house he lived in. After a few minutes, he comes out from an alley and said he had to take a pee and didn't want to go back upstairs to wake his girlfriend. No worries. So I pull out onto the road and start heading to work. As soon as I start making the turn off the main street, I see a patrol car fly onto the road in my rear view. I continue on thinking nothing of it until I see another one approach from the opposite direction of the road I'm on. I take the next right on the road, which happens to be my normal route for getting out of this crap town. Halfway down the street, both patrol cars swing behind me, so I begin to pull over. I get freaking boxed in with guns held at their sides, not drawn at me. I roll down my window with the biggest "what the f*** on my face. I explain we're going to work, and then they start asking my passenger what he's holding and actually draw their weapons. Officer, what's in your left hand? Passenger, my socks? He had extra socks in case it was cold or some crap. Officer, what's in your right hand? Passenger, in the most "please don't freaking shoot me" voice ever. A banana? All in all, pretty awesome. The officers said they were looking for a robbery suspect on foot. Story 2. My son got in a fight in after-school daycare and got a black eye. Next morning, I was at work and my wife could not get him to school because he was too embarrassed that the other kids would make fun of him for losing a fight. My wife calls me frantically and I'm at work with no time to deal with it. I told her to tell him to just say the other kid was much bigger, so no one could blame him for getting beat up. Next thing I know, I get a call from the police. My son told the school an adult had attacked him and they believed him and called the cops. When the cops talked to my son, he told them that he had made it up because his mother told him to say that. The cops called her and she told them I told her to tell him that. So the cops assumed I had beat him up and told him to lie about it. So I told the cops the story and they called the daycare, and fortunately the same worker who was there when my son got in the fight happened to be on duty and was able to tell the cops what really happened. Chances are if she had not been there to take that call, the other daycare workers would have known nothing about this insignificant fight and I would have been arrested for child abuse. Well, that escalated quickly from a simple black eye to being accused of child abuse. Talk about parenting fail. I hope the next time your son gets into a fight, he'll remember to stick to the truth, or you might end up getting a call from the FBI. Story 3. In high school, riding with a friend downtown in my hometown, we get behind a Ford Escort with a bunch of guys in it. At a stop sign, the 5 or 6 guys in it jump out for a Chinese fire drill and all change seats. As we pass them, my friend leans out the window and claps. This set those fine young gentlemen off. They start chasing us, some on foot, some in the car. As the chase continues, they begin to pull bandanas up over their faces and reach into their coats, jackets, etc. At this point, I'm pretty sure we're going to die, but I still managed to direct my friend to the local police station. The guys chasing us circled the block at least twice, waiting for us to leave the parking lot before they finally took off. Story 4. Not my story, but a former roommate. I'll call him Eric, not a real name, and a good friend since junior high. We were in college, 3 of us living in the same apartment. The third roommate studied history, and Eric and I studied computer science. This is just to point out that we were/are pretty much harmless nerds. Precursor to the actual story. I get home one night, and the historian tells me Eric was shot. My first reaction was, stop messing with me, dude. No, really, Eric was shot. Wait, what? Anyway, long story short, he cut someone off on the freeway. They followed him in a blacked out Suburban. He gets off the freeway, they simply open fire at him at the light. Lucky for him, he saw the at the last minute, swerved out of the way and got shot in the arm and shoulder. The bullet entered his shoulder and didn't exit, but you could clearly see a fragment of the bullet in his shoulder pointing at his neck. They never caught the guys in the Suburban, and what's worse, he ended up on the news. Needless to say, Eric was scared because if the bad guys were watching, they now knew who he was. Anyways, fast forward about 6 months, Eric is driving down the freeway at night at a comfy 80 miles per hour, as he likes to do. All of a sudden, a car pulls up behind him and starts to tail him, to the point where he can't even see the headlights. Eric freaks the out, thinking they found him. So he just floors his little Civic and goes as fast as he can. 90 miles per hour, still behind him. 100 miles per hour, still behind him. He pushed it all the way to 110, as fast as the little Civic could go, and the car was still behind him, not letting up. He's now thinking he's dead meat, until the car that was behind him puts on his sirens. Yup, it was the cops behind him the whole time. So he pulls over, never so glad that he got pulled over in his entire life. But, as you can imagine, scared of what the cops will do to him. Still better alive than dead. The cop comes out, pulls out his tells him to get out of his car. The cop tells him that he was seconds away from being pit maneuvered. My friend is crying, telling the cop what happened and why he ran away. The cop shakes his head, thinking it's all bull, but goes to the car and checks his record anyway. And there it is. He got shot some months prior. The cop goes back to Eric and tells him, "Eric, what am I gonna do with you? Next time, just don't speed in the first place," and lets him go. That was a double whew. Whoa, talk about a wild ride. I can't even imagine how terrified Eric must have been, thinking the same guys who shot him before were after him again, and then to find out it was just the cops trying to pull him over for speeding. That's a relief. But seriously, the cop pulling out his that escalated quickly. Glad everything turned out okay for Eric in the end, and hopefully he learned his lesson about speeding on the freeway. Story 5. High school junior year, I was sitting in study hall 4th period, and we have our study hall in our cafeteria, so we're all sitting at lunch tables, etc. I'm sitting there playing Chrono Trigger on my PSP, homebrew for the win, and suddenly I see a kid, we'll call him Kid 1, 2 tables in front of me, jump up and throw a full water bottle as hard as he could at another, Kid 2, 3 tables in front of him. The bottle misses by a lot. I assume he wasn't aiming, just trying to make a statement, and Kid 1 just sprints at Kid 2, throwing chairs and slamming tables on his way there, creating general hellstorm of noise and commotion. Kid 1 attempts to spear Kid 2 to the ground, but Kid 2 was a bit taller, a bit more built, and apparently had good balance. The two then get into this flurry of punches, kicks, grabs, and other incoherent pseudo-wrestling moves, all the while quickly moving right over to my table. They start wailing on each other right next to where I was sitting. I don't know why I didn't get up to avoid getting hit by a stray punch. I guess because it was so quick I wasn't really thinking at all. Their fight starts to mitigate to well behind where I was, and then I see Kid 2 trip Kid 1, and then Kid 2 proceeds to slam Kid 1's head into the hard tile floor. This ended the fight abruptly. Kid 1 was knocked out unconscious. When a few teachers picked him up to bring Kid 1 to the nurse's office, I saw a huge stream of blood going from the top of his forehead down his entire face, just like movies. The time in between the bottle throwing and the head smashing was not but a minute, so I'd definitely say that was quick escalation. Story 6. My high school science teacher was a pretty quiet, nice guy. We had no idea that his wife was terminally ill. One day in the middle of class, the principal came to the door and asked him out into the hallway. The conversation only took 2 minutes, but when he came in, he just gathered up his papers, put them in a folder, and sat at the desk. At first, we thought he was going to tell us something, then he just broke down hysterical crying. He began hyperventilating. A person went to get the nurse, then he started having a seizure. We straightened him out on the floor. I put his head on my lap and moved away anything he could hurt himself on. Apparently, he had a stroke shortly after that and was never able to come back to school. Oh my goodness, that is such a heart-wrenching story. It's so sad to think that this science teacher was going through such a difficult time with his wife's illness and none of his students even knew. And then to have it all come crashing down in the middle of class? That must have been so traumatic for everyone involved. It's amazing that the students were able to spring into action and help him, but it's so heartbreaking to think that it all ended with him having a stroke and not being able to return to school. Story 7. I was in like 3rd or 4th grade. I was a very, very shy child, and I was riding the bus to school one morning. Well, back then, the bus drivers would take attendance once we arrived at the school. Not sure why. Anyways, people always say my name wrong, and as he was calling people's names, they were all here, blah, blah, blah. Well, he gets to my name, and again, like he has all year, says my name wrong. Well, like I said, I was a very shy child and soft-spoken, and I say here, but my name is Hallery, and he starts yelling my name because he didn't hear me. So I spoke a touch louder, and again kindly reminded him how to pronounce my name. He gets so furious that he throws his clipboard, gets up out of his driver's chair, and storms to the back of the bus where I was assigned to sit, and grabs me by my arm and just starts screaming at me that I can say your name however I dang well please, but speak up, little girl. I can't hear your little mousy voice. Why aren't you looking at me when I talk to you? What, are you stupid or something? Then shoves me back into my seat and goes back to the front and opens the door to let us out. I'm hysterically crying at this point, and apparently one of the teachers that makes sure the kids get inside safely heard all this and pulls me aside. They ended up calling my mom, and I was allowed to go home for the rest of the day because I was just so hysterical and nothing and no one could calm me down. Needless to say, he never drove our bus again, or any bus for that matter. Story 8. I made a usually really nice teacher cry once. I was quite the little crap head in high school. The teacher in question was the football coach, a pretty big burly guy. He and his wife had just had a baby. The football team was having a horrible season. There was a lot of talk of teachers and programs getting cut. Just a bad atmosphere for him, lots of stress. I had made a comment about him being wrong about something in a geology class, and he just snapped and started yelling at me to go to the office. So then I made some crappy remark about how he is probably just gonna be fired anyway, and then get to raise a baby with no job. He stopped yelling and just broke down into tears. The whole class gasped. I went to the office. I have never felt like more of a scumbag in my life, and I actually really liked him too. No idea why that came out of my mouth. Story 9. Had a fun teacher in 7th grade, the kind where you never really learn anything in his class, but he helped pique my interest in video production by assigning us film projects all the time. One day he got a call. He stepped out into the hall to take it, came back a few minutes later, sits down at his desk, and then starts screaming for everyone to be quiet. Went absolutely ballistic. It went on for about 10 minutes until he told everyone to just shut up and read. One of the few times I've seen a group of people stunned into absolute silence. The next day, an announcement came that a faculty member of the school had passed away suddenly. My teacher was a close friend and got a call from the family when it happened. He was crying when he apologized to the class for yelling at everyone and explained he wasn't allowed to tell anyone until the school had officially been alerted. School held a memorial in honor of the guy who passed, and it was very emotional. I've seen a lot of teachers lose it, but that was one of the times where it stuck with me. Please leave your story down below in the comments. I would absolutely love to make a video about them in the future, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time, Tony's fam, peace out.